Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Gradius 3, the 1991 iconic Super Nintendo Shoot'em Up. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. As we start the game, we're taken to this weapon select screen. This is something that was added to the Gradius series with Gradius 2, but Gradius 3 takes it another step further. First, we've got these 4 different types that are basically presets, with different missiles, different doubles, and different lasers. But one thing that Gradius 3 adds to the mix is the edit mode. And this is something that the arcade also added as well. So let's take a quick look at the arcade version of the weapon select. So as you're selecting your types, it would actually show you the way that your weapons were firing. And that's something that I really thought was cool, and it would have been nice to see that in the home version, but the fact that it's not there isn't necessarily a deal breaker. In the edit mode, we also have different missiles and doubles, and then there are a couple options missing for both the options and your ultimate special at the end. Going back to the Super Nintendo version, here I'll pick my favorite missile, the Hawkwind. I like this one because it's a missile that tracks along the top or the bottom of the stage and can fire either up or down depending on your vertical position on the screen. Double, the arcade did have some better options with your freeway as well as a spread. Since we don't have that, I usually take the back double, just for a little bit of coverage. Laser options were the same between the two versions. We have the twin laser, the ripple, the energy laser, and the cyclone laser. The energy laser is one that has always been a favorite of mine. It's basically a charge laser, where as you charge it up, it basically engulfs the Big Viper in this ball of energy, protecting you from enemies that might possibly be coming toward you to ram you if they're not having to shoot shots at you. But at the same time, it also slows down the game big time and can be a little cumbersome to use. So for the purpose of today's video, we'll be taking the twin laser. The two options that were added in addition to the option and the S option from the arcade version are the F option and the R option. The F option basically fans the options out in a V delta formation around the Big Viper, and the R option has the options rolling around the ship. F option is my preferred there. Here we've got the shield, the force field from previous Gradius titles. We get the R shield. This spot was occupied by the F shield in the arcade, which is a free shield where you can place the shield orbs where you want it on your ship. Here they just rotate around your ship. And the reduce is also something that's new to the series. And then you've got your ultimates as well. Speed down, full options, full barrier, and mega crush. Now, interesting bit of trivia. If you were to take the speed down and be able to power up all the way to it without any other upgrades, you would then get full power, essentially like you were using the Konami code, which we'll cover here in just a little bit. So, here we are with Gradius 3. Flying the Big Viper around shooting enemies. At the beginning of the stage, like usual, we're collecting power-ups to increase the power of our ship. As we kill certain groups of enemies or certain enemies, we get these power-up drops that power up the bar along the bottom of the screen. And as we move that along to the items that we want, we activate the power-up button and bam, we're good to go. So here we find ourselves in the first stage, Sandstorm. One difference between this one and the arcade is there were some enemies that were present in the original, these sand lions, that were removed from the Super Nintendo version of the title. There's also some differences in the sprites, like some seem more detailed, some less so. Overall, and it might possibly be just the nostalgia factor kicking in, but I do prefer the Super Nintendo's better overall. And those sort of changes are very present throughout the course of the game as far as differences between the arcade and the Super Nintendo version. You've got different sprites changed around, you've got some enemies that were removed, and you also have significant changes in the difficulty balance. The arcade version of Gradius 3 is renowned for its extreme difficulty, and that's one thing that it appears Konami really took into account when they were programming this version for the Super Nintendo, as the balance has been significantly rebalanced. Here we find ourselves at the end of Stage 1 against the Boff Goliath. And he's a great example of how there's been some difficulty tweaks. In the original arcade, not only would there be the outer mandibles that would block the core, but there was also an inner set, so getting the timing right to get a shot in was really just sheer luck. Admittedly, I am playing the game on a lower difficulty setting, so it does make it easier, but at the same time, it was just never as hard as the arcade version ultimately ended up being. Stage 1 defeated, and we move on to Stage 2, Aqua Illusion. So always a staple of the Gradius franchise, the powering up at the beginning of each stage. There's just something about this section that's almost relaxing in both the regularity of it and the ability to make oneself actually stronger. Now, at this point, I've been avoiding the force field, because I feel, especially on like lower levels, you can usually get by without it pretty easily. But once we get further into this stage, I figure it's worth upgrading to our shield. Now, this stage highlights one of the big problems that the Super Nintendo version had, and that's its slowdown. The game itself is, pardon like the pun of it, but very fluid in the arcade version. There was slowdown, but it was nowhere near as evident as the Super Nintendo version, and part of that is my build. As we use the lasers and have full options and missiles and everything, we're adding that many more sprites to the screen, making the slowdown that much worse. And that's especially a problem with some of the other lasers. The Cyclone laser and the Energy laser definitely add a lot of slowdown to the screen. But the arcade version was released in 1989, and the home port would get released on the Super Famicom in December of 1990, shortly after the launch of the Super Famicom in Japan, and Gradius 3 was a launch title for the Super Nintendo in North America in 1991. It was Konami's first Super Nintendo game, so that would explain some of the issues with the slowdown. They weren't as adept at coding for the system, so there were some just general lack of optimization. One thing I do like about the game, there's a whole lot of hidden bonuses. Like if you have your power-up on certain options, you can actually change the mode of your option. There's 10 stages in the game, but in addition to the 10 stages, there's also 5 bonus stages throughout, like this one right here. So that's actually something that's really neat, is all the little extras that they put in the game itself. And also 10 stages makes for actually a very long shoot 'em up as well. I accidentally scraped against the stage and lost my shield there. So in this stage, we're moving through the environment, shooting these pellets, and as they disappear, we unlock basically score orbs. But we do have to be careful, as it's possible to easily die in this stage if we're not watching ourselves. There's situations like that where the pellets just come out of nowhere and surround us. If we happen to get caught in that, we will die. And that would set us back to Aqua Illusion, in this case, or whichever stage you were at. However, if you're able to successfully complete these bonus stages without dying, and then you basically are skipping what was left of the stage that you were just in. So we'll skip the boss fight with the Bubble Eye, which is an interesting fight, but largely straightforward, so I do think that's okay. And with the bonus stage complete, that's it for Stage 2. Moving on to Stage 3, In the Wind. I once again missed the ability to pick up my force field again. And there we have it. That's Gradius 3, served up for your enjoyment. So the plus flavors I feel the game has, definitely, I haven't talked about it much to this point, the soundtrack. It's still one of my favorite shoot-'em up soundtracks to date, and the Super Nintendo is definitely the superior system when it comes to that. It's one area where it did not lose out to the arcade version. Both the soundtrack and the general sound design itself, I feel, is superior. Then we also have the sprite work that's present in the game, as well as the stage design, while we're talking about that I feel has always been like on par with Konami's shoot-'em ups. I love the Vic Viper. It's always been that iconic space fighter in my mind. It's like when I think of a starfighter, that's what I think of. Another really great plus that we have with Gradius 3 is the edit mode for the weapons. And then there's all the bonuses, including the iconic Konami code makes a return. So if you pause the screen and go up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, we've got power-ups. Or not. The actual original Konami code acts as a suicide code in Gradius 3. But there is a modified one that we can get full power-up with. Up, up, down, down, L, R, L, R, using the shoulder buttons, BA, start, and bam, here we are, full power. There are also other codes that you can use at the start of the screen, or the start of the game, to give you additional credits. There's ones to increase the difficulty of the game itself, to give yourself 30 lives. All those bonus stages, I love it when games have all those extras throughout them. And it's really a pity that we don't see more Konami shooters like that, or that sort of loving touch in home titles really anymore. Something from like a bygone era, I suppose. The minus flavors, the elephant in the room here is definitely the slowdown. Since it was an early Super Nintendo title that wasn't well optimized, it shows, and it can be a little bit grating, but it does make the game at least easier in my mind, as that was one problem that the arcade title did have, is that it was known for significantly blistering difficulty. And at least the slowdown is relatively consistent, where it's not going to kill you by slowing down and then speeding up at the wrong times. Then the game does still employ a checkpoint system, and that's might be just a personal gripe of my own, but it still is a gripe. And there you are. Gradius 3, once again, served up for your enjoyment. As usual, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.